All right, everyone, we have some pretty big updates today regarding Switch 2 because we finally have some official sales data coming in for the Nintendo Switch 2 for its launch month, and things are looking very pretty if you're Nintendo. Of course, launch month sales only mean so much. It's all about how can you maintain that momentum in future months, and with Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out in July, I'm pretty sure the momentum's been maintained pretty well, but we don't quite have sales data yet for Donkey Kong Bonanza outside the UK. We talked about that yesterday. Tomorrow we'll have some Japanese numbers, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. But we do need to talk about that today. We also have a new graphics comparison of a brand new AAA release game that is doing this thing where it's kind of showing that for certain genres and certain types of games, visuals have kind of gotten to almost the peak of where they can be, to the point that Switch 2 actually compares quite favorably to something like the PlayStation 5 Pro version of a game. Again, not saying it's more powerful, not saying that the Pro version isn't better, but just saying that visually, most people aren't really going to be able to tell a difference. Beyond all of that, we also have some small updates on the Nintendo Direct. And when I say an update, it's more of a reiteration that there will indeed be a Direct this month, probably next week. That's what all the insiders have been kind of pointed to, and all the speculation has been around that last week of July. So we're going to go over that as well. And then just a few other little details in between here, guys. You guys know what's up. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that 2 lucky winners right now can win a game of choice for their platform of choice, as long as it's a current modern platform like PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, PC, Switch, or Switch 2. It has to be a standard edition of a game, just because those deluxe editions get really crazy at times and sometimes don't even include the game today. Don't ask me how that started becoming normal, but it doesn't matter. What does matter, though, is that you can enter down in the link in the pinned comment or the description. And let's go ahead and dive right in to our first thing, and this is about WWE 2K5. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this game. It's not one I'm going to be picking up, but the graphics on this game look incredible. This comparison is by Zyphos Gaming. He does a number of these graphic comparisons, and look, this is the Switch 2 and the Switch PS5 Pro version. I believe this can go all the way up to 4K here, so we'll even do that. I know I'm only outputting in 1080p, but this at least gives you a better look at that. It's my bad. I forgot to record in 4K today. But that being said, this looks really good. You can see that obviously you could probably find some pixel peeping difference and maybe some difference in dynamic resolution scaling if that's going on. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm an expert on analyzing all of this, but I will note that like this looks really good. As we skip ahead to the actual match and we get past the entrance stuff, you're going to see that this stuff looks pretty much on par. The PlayStation 5 Pro version, the Nintendo Switch 2 version looks on par. I know this is just one game, one specific thing. The crowds look good. The moves look good. The frame rate looks good. Everything about this is looking pretty solid. The visuals obviously being this thing that's more directly comparable. And yeah, it's all looking really good. And this is just kind of proving that we have sort of hit a point of diminishing returns with visuals. I think we've known this the entire PlayStation 5 generation, where not only were most of the games still coming out on PS4, some of the best looking PS4 games would look just as good as games on PS5. Obviously with PS5 offering things like maybe higher frame rates, a little bit of ray trace lighting, and yeah, higher resolution, but the actual visuals themselves weren't inherently looking better. They were just looking crisper and cleaner, which is good, and that's nice, but it was no longer this big visual leap that we have become accustomed to in every generation. Even with the PS3, as good as those games looked at the end of the gen, we definitely were able to see a noticeable difference in PS4. You obviously could do side-by-sides and still see differences, but it's just not as stark as it once was. And so this is just a great showcase for Switch 2, showing that when a game is done properly for it, and obviously this is a very specific type of game, not like a big open world game, it can end up looking really, really good. What can also end up looking really, really good, as I just reorganize things a little bit here, are the sales of Nintendo Switch 2. And we're going to start with Japan, and then we're going to move to the US because we have finalized numbers for the month of June. This comes from Video Game Chronicles. The Switch 2 is selling at least 3 times faster than Switch 1 in Japan. Switch 2 has smashed a new sales record in Japan, this time beating PlayStation 2's first month. So, according to data supplied by Famitsu and reported by Yomiuri, the console has reportedly sold at least 1.5 million units in Japan during its first month. It's worth noting, as highlighted by Katen Games' Dr. Serkan Toto, this doesn't include units sold by Nintendo themselves, anything off the My Nintendo store. Therefore, the number is likely much higher. Some are projecting around 1.7, 1.72. That's not Video Game Chronicle, but VG Charts is making that sort of projection. But right now, 1.5 million we know for sure has sold. Now, Famitsu collects data from over 3,000 Japanese retail stores. According to this data, the Switch 2 has sold 1,538,260 units in its first month, the highest sale for any console in Japan since the publication began collecting data in 1996. The Game Boy Advance previously held the record for Nintendo machines, selling 1,367,433 units in its first month, followed by the DS at 1.2 million. The Switch 2 sale figures indicate it is selling at least 3 times faster than the original Switch in Japan, which managed 556,633 units during the same time. The best first month sales for a non-Nintendo system was 1,134,862 units, which the PS2 managed in the year 2000. Nintendo Switch 2 has sold 3.5 million units globally in its first 4 days on sale. We know that because Nintendo told us that. So that's all pretty crazy, right? We're obviously seeing some pretty insane sales data here. And this insane sales deal continues as we go over to, let me zoom in a bit here on Matt Piscatella. He's over on Blue Sky. And we have some data from Circana, which tracks all of the North America/US sales. You can see there's just a sales breakdown in general that the video game market highlights from Circana. Switch 2 debuted as the fastest selling video game hardware in history. We're going to get to those exact sales in a moment. While consumer spending in both video game hardware and accessories reached an all-time June records, which isn't surprising because there was a new system launch in June. All right. The video game market spending trend, June 2025 projected U.S. total spending on video game hardware, content, and accessories increased 22% when compared to a year ago to $5.7 billion. Year-to-date spending is 2% behind 2024's pace. All right. U.S. video game market 13-month spending trend. You can kind of see things are trending back up, which this is what happens when you launch a new system. The top 25, 20 best-selling games. Obviously, you see Mario Kart World coming in here for June. This is June through July 5th. You can see Mario Kart World comes in at number 3. And there's pretty much not a whole lot else on here from Nintendo. You can talk about maybe some other games on here that might have been multi-platform, but for the most part, that's the only one that really cracked the top in the month for Switch 2 anyways. As we scroll down here, you say, obviously the year-to-date top 20 best-selling premium games. You're not going to see a whole lot on here from Nintendo, or in this case, anything now that I'm glancing at the list, because again, Nintendo was in a downtrend with Switch. They're swinging back up with Switch 2, but Mario Kart World's only been on sale for a month. A lot of these games have been on sale for several months. All right, so let's go down here and get to the real numbers. So hardware. June hardware spending increased 249% when compared to a year ago to $978 million. This is a record high for hardware spending in a June month, surpassing the $608 million reached in June 2008. Now, Switch 2 sold 1.6 million units in June, the highest launch month unit sales for video game hardware in U.S. history. The previous high was 1.1 million of PlayStation 4 sold there November of 2023. Nintendo Switch 2 is June's best-selling video game hardware in both units and dollars, while PlayStation 5 remained the bestseller year-to-date across both measures. June video game content spending grew by 6% when compared to a year ago to $4.4 billion. The increase was driven by a 19% gain in console content, primarily from the launch of the Switch 2. Elden Ring Night Rain repeated as the best-selling premium video game for the month. Death Stranding 2 ranked second. Mario Kart World 3, I showed you guys that already. So there you go. Matt Piscatella had a little bit more to say about all this, just in terms of talking about the market in general, and he's quoting IGN, but he's actually quoting himself. What the launch of sales of Switch 2 primarily tell us is that they made a lot of Switch 2s to sell at launch. Lifetime sales and launch sales of a console often do not correlate. But having the biggest launch month sales for any new video game hardware platform is a hell of a good start. It's like, yeah, you can't predict long-term success off of this, but you also can't dismiss that nothing's ever done this before. So you're not going to complain about that kind of start, right? Obviously, its sustainability long-term is going to take several months of it being supported this way, but this is just really good news for Nintendo. Like, they're doing very, very well. It shows that, the price at launch at least didn't really harm anything. Now, we knew 3.5 million sold in 4 days. That was worldwide numbers. We now know if you combine those numbers together, 1.5 and 1.6, that gets you to 3.1 million in just Japan and the United States alone, not counting My Nintendo Store sales, which could chuck on another 200 to 400,000 units potentially, and then you have the rest of the world. So you could be looking at 3.5 million in just Japan and the US. Toss on the rest of the world, and you might be looking closer to 5 million. So these numbers are obviously incredible. We have no idea. We will get a full update from Nintendo on the final Switch 2 numbers worldwide on August 1st. That'll be our next big sales update video in regards to this sort of data. Obviously, we have our Donkey Kong Bonanza launch numbers for Japan tomorrow. So there you go. Do with that data what you will. Obviously, for Nintendo as a business, this is all looking very good. Now, when we jump into this next story here, we got to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows, because Ubisoft has not said anything about it coming to a Switch 2. We know that it leaked through a PEGI rating that it was coming to Switch 2, but Ubisoft still was mum on it. And while they're not officially announcing it for Switch 2, they're finally admitting it's coming to other platforms when it's already on every platform but Switch 2. After Switch 2 listing, Ubisoft confirms Assassin's Creed Shadows for other machines. Ubisoft says it will release additional versions of the game. So, speaking during the company's latest financial results web call, which was a wild web call, you haven't seen us cover some of it yesterday. He's Guma saying some wild stuff about the industry right now. Anyways, they announced that Shadow surpassed 5 million players. CEO Yves Guillemot discussed future plans for the title. The exec confirmed it had plans for Assassin's Creed title beyond the upcoming Claws of Awaji expansion, which is set to release before October and add 10 hours of content on Assassin's Creed Shadows. It had a very good start, and we have lots of things that are going to come soon. We have an expansion that is coming before the end of the quarter, and we also have some new versions that will come to other machines. Asked specifically about the Switch 2, Guillemot and Ubisoft said it hasn't said which game it'll bring to Nintendo's platform in the coming year. According to Ubisoft's latest financial results, Shadows performed in line with expectations and recently crossed the 5 million player mark. Earlier this year, Assassin's Creed appeared on the website European Ratings Board of PEGI with the Switch 2 as a listed platform. So they're not confirming it. But the big thing is not only they're bringing Star Wars Outlaws over, they talk about new versions that will come to other machines. Well, Shadows is already on PC. It's on Xbox Series. It's on PlayStation. Other machines could be like streaming on mobile or something, but come on. We all know what's going on with the PEGI listing. It's just not officially announced. Probably will be announced in the next Nintendo Direct if I had to guess. And that's why he's just staying mum on it, because they have an agreement with Nintendo or something like that. Now, one game that some people are really excited for that was announced all the way back during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, but we have not seen any information on it since, is Age of Imprisonment. And we finally have an update that should be good news for any hopes that it somehow squeezes in this calendar year. Remember, it is officially listed for winter 2025. Most of winter actually happens in the beginning of 2026, but winter officially begins, at least here in America, at December 20th, but snow can come before then. So it's always like, you could say winter, but does winter mean literal calendar winter, or does it just mean when people generally start to think about winter, which is usually sometime during the month of December, beginning of December? Sometimes they even think about it before we get to Thanksgiving. Well, we have an update here. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity received a rating in Brazil. In addition to the game being able to be sold in physical media in the country, it is a sign that we will have news about it soon. And here you go. This is the listing of it and it being rated in Brazil. Now, what's really great about this, of course, as Necro Felipe notes here, is that this likely means that there is going to be news about this fairly soon. Probably a release date and all that. Yeah, Nintendo Direct. It's just another indicator that a Nintendo Direct is indeed happening soon, or at least an announcement through the Nintendo Today app or something, right? Because Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is hotly anticipated by many people who played Tears of the Kingdom, and also people that enjoyed the Age of Calamity Hyrule Warriors as well. There was millions that bought that. So this is one that's really exciting. It's a Switch 2 exclusive, and it's supposed to come winter 2025. So there's a chance it could still come this year, maybe be the big December game. That's what I'm hoping for. And when you see ratings like this, that usually means something's going to be coming in the next 6 months. So, hey, let's see what happens. You know what else we have to see what happens with? How about the Nintendo Direct in general? I know some people are getting nervous. It's obviously not this week. Lots of speculation was that it was going to be the last week anyways. We have Attack the Batlog and Nash Weedle that both have sources. It's the last week of the month. We have Beat 'em Up saying that it's just in July in general. And we obviously had Nate the Hate saying that he knew or has heard anyways that it's in the second half of July. And he was speculating it would be the final week of the month. Well, Nate the Hate reclarified something. And I want to be very clear. This is a reclarification. There are people treating this as if he's doubling down, when really he's just re-clarifying his previous statements when people ask him about a direct still happening. So as we get down here to his replies on X, you can see here, is a direct still happening in July? And it says, to my knowledge. That was posted a little bit under a day ago at the time of recording. Now, again, this is very important to note that Nate the Hate is not providing a new update. He did not get new information to say there's going to be a direct this month. It's the same information he had when he made that statement. He just hasn't heard anything to contradict and or change that statement. So he's not like doubling down. He's not like, oh, I got more sources and now, hey, it's really happening this month. It's more like, no, I'm just reiterating what I already said. You asked me, is a direct still happening in July? That is the question. And he said, to my knowledge. He's saying, hey, based on what I know, which is the same stuff I shared like a week and a half ago, yeah, a direct is happening this month. So that would mean last week, which is exactly what Nate the Hate speculated. So a lot of headlines running around on that. I totally get it. I understand why it can come across as doubling down. I believe Nate clarified in a post somewhere that he wasn't doubling down. Let me just go down to some of the replies he's had on some of this stuff because it gets a little wild here. Like this right here. This is what happens on social media. Don't bet on Nate the Hate. I believe it's set for the 29th of July. Okay, fine. That would be on a Tuesday. I certainly don't bet on him after how wrong he was last year. Seeing that he hadn't done the third of the year. That's why I'm finished with seeing these things. How was he wrong last year? Almost all his information were spot on. Even when he was wrong in the one instance with the Switch 2 reveal info, the original plan was there. Just Nintendo messed it up. He was wrong as well about a Nintendo Direct taking place on the 3rd of last year. We'll give him more details on games announced in June. And the first party announces. They said the 3rd of what? The 3rd refers to what ranges from September to December. Each year has 3/3 to it, which are 4/12 of each month. So he's talking about, the 3rd quarter of the year or something. I don't even know. When did I say a direct was taking place in that window? And he's just gaslighting. Nate the Hate just pointed out, he never actually said our direct was happening in that window. PH Brazil was the source of a direct for August. Nate the Hate never said there wasn't going to be a direct in September, October, November, December. He never said any of that. It's kind of weird with the internet. They try these gotchas at times. But yeah, as you go down and you just look at his responses, for the most part, he's just clarifying that, hey, from what I've been told, a direct is still on, so don't worry about it. So we'll see what happens. Next week is the week of hope for a direct. That being said, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys decided to tune in for a podcast tonight. We have a slammed show tonight, right? We have Nintendo Talk coming on. We have Jake Rando coming on. We have Saya Rand coming on. Gosh, there's someone else I'm forgetting right off the top of my head. Plus, obviously, Thunderstash, Gamebird, myself. Eric is unfortunately going to be skipping the show tonight. What a bastard. Why have a life, man? He's got a work commitment he's got to take care of. But that's all right. He'll be sorely missed. But hey, the show must go on. So we're going to have a killer podcast for you tonight, talking all about Donkey Kong Bonanza and kind of giving a pseudo review and discussing if it's a GOTY contender, and then giving some thoughts on that Pokemon Presents as well, and maybe a smidge of extra thoughts on sales data. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Rumplejans from Nintendo Prime, and as always, I'll catch you in the next video.